The rain drummed against the garage door like impatient fingers, and I stood there holding 2 garbage bags, wondering how my life had become so predictable. Seth Morrison, 38 years old, IT consultant, suburban homeowner with a mortgage that would outlive cockroaches. The glamorous life of an average husband. I was about to haul the bags to the curb when I heard Sabrina's voice drifting from her SUV. She was on the phone, engine running, probably warming up the leather seats she insisted we needed. The driver's side window was cracked open just enough for her voice to carry across the driveway. "Oh, please, Pamela," she was saying, and I could hear that particular tone she used when she thought no one important was listening. "I married down, and we both know it. Seth's mediocre at his job, mediocre with money, and trust me, he's mediocre in everything else too, if you know what I mean." The garbage bag suddenly felt heavier. I stood frozen in the garage doorway, rain misting my face, feeling like an intruder in my own life. Pamela's laughter crackled through the phone speaker. "So what's the plan? You can't stay married to Average forever." "I'm working on it," Sabrina replied, her voice cold and calculating in a way I'd never heard before. "The mortgage gets paid off next year. After that, I'll upgrade. James has been very understanding about my situation." James, her college boyfriend who'd moved back to town 6 months ago, the finance guy with the expensive suits and the condescending smile. "You're terrible," Pamela giggled, "but smart. Very smart." The conversation continued, but the rain was getting louder, and my brain was struggling to process what I'd just heard. 15 years of marriage, and I was apparently just a placeholder until something better came along. A mediocre placeholder. I set the garbage bags down quietly and stepped back into the garage. The automatic door was still open, and Sabrina's SUV was still running, but now everything looked different. The oil stain I kept meaning to clean, the lawnmower that needed a tune-up, the life I'd built that apparently wasn't worth keeping. 20 minutes later, Sabrina walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. She was still beautiful at 36, with that real estate agent smile that could sell ice to penguins. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the rain, and she wore the black dress that used to make me forget my own name. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing my cheek with practiced affection. "Just the usual," I replied, testing the words. "You know, being average." She didn't even flinch. "Well, average has its place, I suppose. What's for dinner?" I microwaved leftover pizza and watched her scroll through her phone while she ate. Every few minutes, she'd smile at the screen in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. When she excused herself to take a call, I knew exactly who it was. That night, she sat on the edge of our bed and delivered the final blow with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. "Seth, I think we should have an open relationship." I looked up from my laptop. "Excuse me?" "We're both adults. We have needs. I think it would be healthy for us to explore other connections while maintaining our partnership here. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Partnership, like we were a small business filing joint taxes." "What brought this on?" I asked, though I already knew. She shrugged. "I just think we've grown apart. This way we can both find what we're looking for without the drama of separation." The word separation hung in the air like smoke. She was giving me an ultimatum disguised as a gift. Accept her affair or leave. Either way, she got what she wanted. I closed the laptop and stood up. "You know what, Sabrina? You're absolutely right." Her eyebrows rose slightly. She'd expected a fight. "We should both explore other options," I continued, grabbing my jacket from the closet. "Thanks for being so honest about what you want." "Where are you going?" "To explore," I said. "Isn't that what you suggested?" I walked out of the house and drove to Dennis's bar downtown. Dennis O'Malley had been my best friend since college, and his place was the kind of dive where you could think without interruption. He took one look at my face and poured 2 whiskeys without being asked. "She wants an open relationship," I told him. Translation: "She's already got someone lined up," Dennis replied. He was 39, never married, and had the cynical wisdom of a man who'd watched too many relationships crash and burn from behind a bar. James Patterson, her college boyfriend. "The finance guy with the fancy car?" "That's the one." Dennis shook his head. "So what's the plan?" "I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for," I said. "An open relationship. Wide open." And my phone buzzed with a text from Tasha, Sabrina's best friend. "Heard the news. Want to grab dinner tomorrow? I think we should talk." I showed Dennis the message. He grinned. That was fast. "Tasha always was ambitious," I replied, typing back. "Sure, tomorrow at 7. Pick the place." You're not actually going to... Dennis started. I'm going to find out exactly how deep this goes, I said, and then I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too. The rain had stopped by the time I got home. Sabrina was already asleep, or pretending to be. I sat in the kitchen with my laptop and started making lists. Assets, accounts, mutual friends, social media connections, evidence. If Sabrina wanted to play games, I was going to change the rules. Tasha picked Giovanni's, an upscale Italian place downtown where the portions were small and the wine was expensive. She arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a red dress that was probably supposed to make me forget I was married. Tasha Williams was 35, divorced twice, and had the predatory instincts of someone who viewed other people's relationships as opportunities. You look good, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Different. Thanks. You look... I paused, letting my eyes wander just enough to make her think she was winning. Stunning, as always. She preened slightly. Tasha had always been competitive with Sabrina, and now she thought she was about to score a major victory. I ordered wine and let her talk. I have to say, I was surprised when Sabrina told me about your arrangement, she said, leaning forward, but also impressed. Most men would have thrown a tantrum. Most men probably would have, I agreed, but I'm not most men. No, you're not. Her hand found mine across the table. Sabrina doesn't appreciate what she has. I let her hold my hand while I activated the voice recording app on my phone. The device was sitting on the table next to my water glass, completely visible but unremarkable. Can I ask you something, Tasha? Anything. How long has she been seeing James? Tasha's eyes lit up. This was the gossip she'd been eager to share. Oh, honey, that started months ago, maybe 6. She's been planning this for a while. Planning what, exactly? The whole open relationship thing. She knew you'd either accept it or leave, and either way, she gets what she wants. Tasha squeezed my hand. She's been moving money around, too, setting up her own accounts. She thinks you don't notice, but I told her she was underestimating you. The wine arrived, and I filled both glasses generously. Tasha was the type who got chatty when she drank. What else has she been planning? I asked. Well, there's the house. She wants to keep it, obviously. And James has been helping her figure out the legal stuff. His brother's a lawyer, you know. I didn't know, but I filed that information away with everything else. She showed me some of their text messages, Tasha continued, giggling. Very steamy. And the photos they've been sending each other? Let's just say James is very confident. Photos? Oh, yes. Sabrina screenshots everything. She's got a whole folder on her phone. Tasha leaned closer. Want to know a secret? She's been meeting him at the Marriott downtown, every Tuesday and Thursday for the past month. Room 412. James has some kind of corporate rate. I refilled her glass. That's very specific. I helped her pick out lingerie for one of their dates, Tasha said proudly. Black lace. Very expensive. She charged it to your credit card. The rage that flashed through me was white-hot and immediate, but I kept my expression neutral. Did she now? She said you'd never notice. You don't pay attention to the bills anyway, right? Wrong. I paid attention to everything. But Sabrina had been counting on my predictable, average husband routine to keep me in the dark. Tell me more about James, I said. What's his story? Tasha was happy to oblige. James Patterson, 40 years old, divorced, worked for Morrison Financial Group downtown. He drove a silver BMW, lived in a condo in the Arts District, and had a reputation for dating younger women. He was also, according to Tasha, arrogant enough to think he was untouchable. He calls you the placeholder, she said, laughing. Isn't that terrible, but kind of funny? Hilarious, I said dryly. By the time we finished dinner, Tasha had given me enough information to destroy both Sabrina and James. She'd also had enough wine to start making obvious moves, running her foot up my leg under the table and suggesting we go back to her place. Rain check, I said, signaling for the bill. I want to take this slow. She pouted, but agreed. You're worth waiting for, Seth. Sabrina's an idiot for not seeing that. I walked her to her car and let her kiss me goodnight. It was brief and tasted like wine and betrayal. As soon as she drove away, I sat in my car and replayed the recording. Every word was crystal clear. My phone buzzed with a text from Dennis. How did it go? Better than expected, I typed back. Step 1 complete. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day at the bank. I opened a new checking account in my name only and transferred half of our joint savings. Legally, it was my right. Morally, it was payback for the lingerie charge and whatever else Sabrina had been hiding. I also made copies of all our financial records, insurance policies, and the deed to the house. If Sabrina wanted to play legal games, I was going to be ready. That evening, I was waiting in the kitchen when she got home from work. She looked surprised to see me. "You're home early," she said. "Took a personal day. We need to talk." She set down her purse carefully. "About what?" "About the rules of our new arrangement." "Rules?" "If we're going to have an open relationship, we need boundaries, transparency. I think we should tell each other about our other connections." Sabrina's face went pale. "I don't think that's necessary." "I do. In fact, I insist." I smiled at her, the same pleasant smile she'd been giving me for months while planning my replacement. "Unless you have something to hide?" "Of course not," she said quickly. "I just think some privacy is healthy." "Privacy is one thing, secrets are another." I stood up and moved closer to her. "For instance, I had dinner with Tasha last night. Very illuminating conversation." The color drained completely from Sabrina's face. "What did she tell you?" "Everything," I said simply. "Room 412 at the Marriott, the text messages, the photos, the black lingerie you bought with my credit card. Should I continue?" Sabrina's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For the first time in our marriage, she was completely speechless. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to end things with James, tonight, and then we're going to have a real conversation about our marriage." "You can't tell me what to do," she said, but her voice was shaking. "You're right. I can't." I picked up my jacket. "But I can tell everyone else what you've been doing, starting with your boss at the real estate office, then your parents, then everyone at the country club. You wouldn't. Try me." I left her standing in the kitchen and drove back to Dennis's bar. My phone was buzzing with calls and texts, but I ignored them all. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2 was going to be much more interesting. The Riverside Country Club's monthly mixer was the social event where reputations were made and destroyed. I'd always hated these gatherings. Too much small talk, too many fake smiles, too much posturing. But tonight was different. Tonight, I had a purpose. Sabrina arrived separately, which was probably smart. She wore her navy blue cocktail dress and her most confident smile, working the room like the professional she was. To anyone watching, we looked like a couple who'd simply arrived at different times. Nobody suspected that our marriage was currently a war zone. I positioned myself near the bar where Dennis was working a special event shift. He'd volunteered for this gig specifically to help with my plan. The man was a true friend. "You sure about this?" he asked while mixing drinks. "Absolutely," I replied, watching Sabrina charm the Hendersons near the buffet table. "She wants to play social games? Let's play." James arrived fashionably late, as always. He was wearing his expensive suit and his smuggest expression, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. He made a beeline for Sabrina, and I watched them exchange what they probably thought were subtle glances. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, tapping my glass with a knife. The room gradually quieted. "If I could have your attention for just a moment." Sabrina's face went white. She knew exactly what was happening. "As many of you know, my wife Sabrina and I have been going through some changes lately. She recently suggested we explore an open relationship, which I found very enlightening." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Riverside Country Club wasn't exactly known for its progressive attitudes toward marriage. "In the spirit of openness," I continued, "I thought you should all know about Sabrina's relationship with James Patterson here. They've been meeting at the Marriott downtown twice a week for the past month. Room 412, in case anyone's curious." The room erupted. James looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Sabrina was pushing through the crowd toward me, her face a mask of rage and panic. "Seth, stop this right now," she hissed when she reached me. "Stop what? I'm just being open. Isn't that what you wanted?" "You're making a scene." "Am I? Or am I just telling the truth?" James had recovered enough to approach us, his jaw clenched. "Morrison, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Having a conversation," I replied calmly. "Though I suppose you prefer your conversations to be more private, like the ones where you call me the placeholder." His face flushed red. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I pulled out my phone and played a snippet of the recording from dinner with Tasha. James's voice came through clearly. "The placeholder won't be a problem much longer." The crowd was eating this up. Nothing like a good scandal to spice up a boring mixer. "You recorded me?" James sputtered. "Actually, Tasha recorded you. Well, she recorded herself talking about you. Amazing how much people will share when they think they're on the winning side." Sabrina grabbed my arm. "We're leaving. Now." "We?" I looked around at the faces surrounding us. "I don't think we exists anymore, do you?" I walked away, leaving them to face the music. The last thing I heard was Mrs. Henderson asking Sabrina if the rumors about the lingerie were true. Dennis found me in the parking lot 20 minutes later. "That was brutal," he said, grinning. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "It's not over yet," I replied. That was just the opening act. My phone was buzzing constantly now. Texts, calls, voicemails. The Riverside Gossip Network was faster than the internet. By morning, everyone in town would know about Sabrina's affair. I drove to my new apartment, a furnished one-bedroom place I'd rented that afternoon. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No shared mortgage, no shared anything. Just space to think and plan my next move. Sabrina called 17 times that night. I didn't answer. The next morning, I went to James's office building. Morrison Financial Group occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown, and James's BMW was parked in his reserved spot in the garage. I'd done my research. The car was his pride and joy, a silver M3 that he'd customized with racing stripes and expensive rims. I walked around the car slowly, admiring the paint job. Then I took out my keys. The scratch ran from the driver's side door all the way to the rear bumper, deep enough to require a complete repaint. I carved the word average into the hood, taking my time with each letter. When I was finished, I stepped back to admire my work. "Not so mediocre now, am I?" I said to the empty garage. I took photos of my handiwork and posted them anonymously to the building's community message board with the caption, "Cheaters get what they deserve." Then I went home to wait for the fireworks. James called me 2 hours later, screaming, "You psychopath! Do you have any idea how much that car cost?" "About as much as 15 years of marriage, I'd guess," I replied. "Though probably less than what you've been spending on hotel rooms." "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead, but you might want to think about what that conversation will sound like." "Officer, the husband of the woman I'm having an affair with scratched my car." "I'm sure that'll go over well." He hung up on me. Sabrina showed up at my apartment that evening. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her usual polished outfit. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" "Seth, please. This has gone far enough." I let her in, curious to hear what she had to say. She sat on my couch and started crying. Real tears, not the crocodile variety she usually deployed when she wanted something. "I made a mistake," she said. "A huge mistake. I was confused and scared, and I handled everything wrong." "Which part was the mistake? The affair or getting caught?" "All of it. James means nothing to me. It was just excitement, something different. But I love you, Seth. I love our life together." "Our life together? You mean the one where I'm mediocre at everything?" She winced. "You heard that." "I heard a lot of things, like how you've been planning to leave me as soon as the mortgage is paid off, how you've been moving money into secret accounts, how James's brother is helping you with the legal strategy. It wasn't like that." "What was it like, Sabrina? Explain it to me." She wiped her eyes. "I felt trapped, like we were just going through the motions. And then James came back to town, and he reminded me of who I used to be before I got married, before I became just another suburban housewife." "So you decided to trade up?" "I thought I wanted to, but seeing how you've handled all this, you're not the man I thought you were." "No," I agreed. "I'm not." She leaned forward. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Start over. I'll do whatever it takes." I looked at her sitting on my cheap couch in my cheap apartment, offering to save a marriage she'd been planning to end. The irony was almost funny. "It's too late for that," I said. "It's never too late. We can—" "Sabrina." I held up my hand to stop her. "You called me mediocre. You mocked me to your sister. You spent my money on lingerie for another man. You planned to abandon me the moment it became financially convenient. And now you want to fix things? People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was a strategy. And the only reason you want to change course now is because your strategy backfired." She stared at me for a long moment. "So what happens now?" "Now you live with the consequences of your choices. What about James?" I smiled. "James is about to learn what mediocre really looks like." James Patterson worked on the 15th floor of Morrison Financial Group, in a corner office with a view of the river. I knew this because I'd spent 3 days studying his routine. He arrived at 8:30 sharp, left for lunch at noon, and usually stayed until 6. He was predictable, which made him vulnerable. I also knew that his firm had a strict morality clause in their employment contracts. Adultery, public scandal, anything that reflected poorly on the company's reputation could result in immediate termination. I'd learned this from their website, where they proudly advertised their family values approach to financial planning. My plan was simple: Make James's affair so public and embarrassing that his employers would have no choice but to let him go. I started with his social media. James was active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, always posting about his success, his car, his lifestyle. He was the type of man who needed constant validation, which made him easy to manipulate. Using a fake account, I began commenting on his posts with subtle hints about his personal life. Nothing actionable, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. Hope your wife knows about all those business trips, I wrote under a photo of him at an expensive restaurant. Some of us know what really goes on at the Marriott, I added to another post. James started deleting the comments, but not before other people saw them. His friends and colleagues began asking questions. The gossip mill was turning. Next, I targeted his professional reputation. James had been bragging about landing a big client, the Hendersons from the country club, ironically enough. I knew they were conservative people who valued discretion and family stability in their financial advisor. I arranged to run into Mr. Henderson at his favorite coffee shop. Terrible business about James Patterson, I said, shaking my head sadly. What business? Henderson asked, taking the bait. Oh, you haven't heard? I thought everyone knew by now. He's been having an affair with my wife. Very public scandal. I'm surprised his firm is keeping him on, given their family values policy. Henderson's face darkened. Are you certain about this? Absolutely. They've been meeting at hotels, exchanging inappropriate messages. My lawyer has documentation. I sighed dramatically. I just hope it doesn't affect his judgment when it comes to his client's finances. Adultery shows such poor decision-making, don't you think? By the end of the week, the Hendersons had pulled their account from Morrison Financial Group. So had two other families from the country club. James's boss called him in for a meeting, but I wasn't finished. I knew James worked out at an expensive gym downtown, the kind of place where wealthy men went to network and show off. I signed up for a day pass and waited for him in the locker room. James, I said pleasantly when he walked in after his workout. How's the car? He froze. What are you doing here? Working out, same as you. I closed my locker and turned to face him. Though I have to say, you don't look well. Stress? Stay away from me, Morrison. Or what? You'll call the police? Report me for using a public gym? I stepped closer. Tell me, how's work going? I heard you lost some clients. His face was red with anger and exertion. You're destroying my life. Am I? I thought I was just being open about your relationship with my wife. Isn't transparency important in your line of work? You're crazy. No, I'm average. Remember? Mediocre in every way. But apparently that's still better than being you. I walked past him toward the exit, then turned back. Oh, and James? You might want to check your company's social media policy. I hear they're very strict about employees who generate negative publicity. That afternoon, I created a fake news tip and sent it to the local business journal. Morrison Financial Group advisor involved in adultery scandal loses major clients. I included just enough verifiable facts to make it newsworthy. The story ran online that evening. James's name, his affair with a married client's wife, the lost accounts. Everything presented as factual business news. His boss fired him the next morning. Sabrina called me, hysterical. What did you do? I told the truth, I replied. Isn't that what you wanted? Openness? James lost his job. His career is ruined. Actions have consequences. You should have explained that to him before you started your affair. This is insane, Seth. You've gone too far. Have I? Let's see. You betrayed our marriage, mocked me behind my back, stole money from our joint accounts, and planned to abandon me for another man. But I'm the one who's gone too far? I never stole money? The lingerie charge, the secret bank account, the cash withdrawals you thought I wouldn't notice. Should I continue? She was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? I want you to understand what mediocre feels like, I said. I want you to know how it feels to be discarded and replaced. I want you to experience the humiliation you put me through. And then what? We're even? Then nothing. This isn't about getting even, Sabrina. This is about consequences. I hung up and poured myself a drink. Through my apartment window, I could see the city lights reflecting off the river. Somewhere out there, James was probably updating his resume and wondering how his perfect life had fallen apart so quickly. Somewhere else, Sabrina was realizing that her backup plan had just evaporated. My phone buzzed with a text from Dennis. Heard about James on the news. You're becoming legendary. I smiled and typed back. Just getting started. The next phase would be more personal. It was time to deal with Sabrina directly. 3 weeks had passed since James lost his job, and the social fallout was spreading like wildfire through our circle. Sabrina had been ostracized by most of her friends, dropped by several clients, and was facing a formal review at her real estate office. The affair that was supposed to upgrade her life had instead destroyed everything she'd worked to build. I was sitting in my apartment, reviewing divorce papers my lawyer had prepared, when someone started pounding on my door. Heavy, desperate knocking that echoed through the small space. "Seth, open this door right now." Sabrina's voice, but different, raw and furious in a way I'd never heard before. I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, soaking wet from the rain, her hair plastered to her head. She pushed past me into the apartment. "You destroyed him," she said, spinning around to face me. "James is finished. His career, his reputation, everything. Are you happy now?" "Ecstatic," I replied, closing the door. "Though I have to point out that I didn't destroy anything. I just made sure people knew the truth about what you two were doing." "The truth? You systematically sabotaged his life." "I exposed his choices. There's a difference." She was pacing now, leaving wet footprints on my carpet. "He's talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere else." "Sounds like a plan. Maybe you should go with him." "Maybe I will." "Good. Then we both get what we want." She stopped pacing and stared at me. "What happened to you, Seth? You used to be nice, predictable, safe." "I used to be a lot of things. But apparently I was also mediocre, so I decided to improve." "This isn't improvement. This is revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing." My phone buzzed with a text message. Sabrina lunged for it, but I was faster. "Who is that?" she demanded. "Celeste," I said, reading the message. "She's a friend of Dennis's. We've been seeing each other." Sabrina's face went pale. "You're dating someone?" "We're exploring a connection. Isn't that what you suggested?" "That's different." "How?" Because you're doing it to hurt me." I laughed, and the sound surprised both of us. "Sabrina, everything isn't about you. Celeste is smart, funny, and honest. She treats me like I matter. It's refreshing." "I treated you like you mattered." "No, you treated me like I was convenient, like I was a placeholder until something better came along. Your words, not mine." She sank onto my couch, suddenly deflated. "I never meant for it to go this far." "What did you mean for? A quiet affair until you could engineer a divorce that left you with the house and half my assets? A clean transition from one man to another without any messy complications?" "I was unhappy, Seth. Our marriage felt like a routine, like we were just roommates who shared expenses." "So you decided to fix that by having an affair and planning to leave me?" I thought maybe if I had something exciting in my life, I could figure out what I really wanted." "And what did you figure out?" She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "That I made a terrible mistake." "Yes, you did. But not the mistake you think." "What do you mean?" I sat down across from her, studying her face. Even disheveled and crying, she was beautiful. But beauty without loyalty was just decoration. "Your mistake wasn't having the affair," I said. "Your mistake was underestimating me. You thought I was too average, too mediocre, too predictable to fight back. You thought you could manipulate me into accepting whatever scraps you were willing to throw my way." "I never thought that." "You called me mediocre, Sabrina. You mocked our intimate life to your sister. You stole money from our joint accounts to buy lingerie for another man. You planned to abandon our marriage the moment it became financially convenient. What would you call that?" She was crying harder now. "I would call it the worst thing I've ever done." "At least we agree on something." My phone buzzed again. This time it was Dennis. "Emergency at the bar. Can you come? Bring backup if you have it." I frowned. Dennis never asked for help unless something was seriously wrong. "I have to go," I said, standing up. "Where?" "Dennis needs help at the bar." "I'm coming with you." "No, you're not." "Seth, please, don't leave me alone right now. I'm scared." I looked at her sitting on my couch, mascara running down her cheeks, hair still dripping from the rain. 3 weeks ago, I would have comforted her. Tonight, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "You should be scared," I said. "You should be terrified, because this is what consequences look like." I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. "Seth, wait." I turned back. "What?" "What happens now?" "To us, I mean." "There is no us, Sabrina. There's you, and there's me, and there's the divorce papers my lawyer is filing tomorrow morning." "You're really going to throw away 15 years? "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that." I left her sitting in my apartment and drove through the rain to Dennis's bar. The streets were mostly empty, and the city looked washed clean under the streetlights. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. When I arrived at the bar, I found Dennis behind the counter with a grim expression and James Patterson sitting at the far end, drunk and belligerent. "He's been here for 2 hours," Dennis said quietly. "Talking about you, making threats. I thought you should know." James looked up when he saw me. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie was loose, and his eyes were red with alcohol and rage. "There he is," James slurred. "The average man who destroyed my life." "James," I said calmly, "you look terrible. You ruined everything." He stood up unsteadily. "My job, my reputation, my future, all because you couldn't handle the fact that your wife wanted a real man." "A real man?" I moved closer. "A real man doesn't sneak around with married women. A real man doesn't mock someone behind their back. A real man takes responsibility for his choices." "You think you're so smart," James said, "but you're still just average, Seth. Still mediocre. Still nothing special." I smiled. "You're right, James. I am average, but apparently average is still better than unemployed." He swung at me then, a clumsy, drunken punch that I easily dodged. He stumbled forward, and I caught him by the shoulders. "Here's the thing about being average," I said, looking him in the eyes. "Average people work hard. Average people keep their promises. Average people don't abandon their responsibilities when things get difficult. Average people build things instead of tearing them down." I released him, and he staggered backward. "Your problem isn't that I'm average," I continued. "Your problem is that you're not even that." James tried to swing again, but Dennis stepped between us. "That's enough," Dennis said firmly. "James, you need to leave. Now." "This isn't over," James said, pointing at me. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's been over since the moment you decided my wife was worth more than my marriage. You lost, James. Accept it." Dennis escorted him to the door, and I watched through the window as James stumbled to his car. He sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine and driving away. "Think he'll be back?" Dennis asked. "No," I said. "He's finished here. They both are." I ordered a drink and sat at the bar, listening to the rain against the windows. My phone was full of missed calls and messages from Sabrina, but I ignored them all. Tomorrow I would file for divorce. Tomorrow I would start the next chapter of my life. Tonight, I was just going to sit in a quiet bar with my best friend and enjoy the fact that I was no longer average. I was the man who had fought back and won, and that felt pretty extraordinary.